I rode my ATV up my mountain and found a $600,000 luxury home built dead center on my land. No permit, no notice. By sunset, it was rubble. By morning, the HOA president was under criminal investigation. I'm Terrence Bishop, state attorney, black man who earned this mountain through 15 years, prosecuting white-collar criminals who thought rules didn't apply. The beautiful HOA president in the crimson-red blazer who built it? She sent the internal email herself. He lives up there alone. He won't push back. We'll bury him in motions. She counted on me folding. She didn't know I built my career burying people exactly like her. 4 hours to demolish her house. 4 minutes to destroy her in court. 20 years of justice delivered. Most stories start quietly. Mine started with trespass. I'm a black man who spent 15 years as a prosecutor putting away criminals who believed consequences were for other people. Bought this 80-acre mountain property in Elk Hollow, Colorado with money I earned the hard way, South Memphis to law school on scholarships, state attorney before 35. 20 years I've owned this land. Built my workshop with my own hands. Married Ellie 6 years ago, paralegal, sharp as broken glass, the only person who understands why I need the mountain to stay exactly as it is. No HOA, no neighbors, no compromises. That Saturday morning, I planned simple maintenance. Ride the ATV up the North Ridge, check boundary markers, clear storm debris, be home before lunch. Ellie handed me coffee strong enough to restart a dead battery and gave me that don't chase raccoons look before I left. But halfway up the ridge, something caught my eye too straight, too polished, too wrong. I killed the engine. The trees opened. And there it was. A luxury cottage with wraparound deck, stone columns, floor-to-ceiling windows, fresh sawdust, magazine cover finish. Sitting dead center on my land. GPS confirmed it. The house sat 0.47 miles inside my boundary, not near the line dead center. I didn't shout or demand answers. I documented. Phone out, recording, North Ridge, 10:14 a.m. Structure inside property line, unpermitted. Trespass, inside. Sawdust in the air, empty boxes, fresh tire tracks leading away. The crew had vanished fast. Then I found it. A steel utility box hidden in the wall. Inside, blueprints. Not just for this house, for the ridge. 3 more structures marked. Paths, decking. Bottom corner, Phase 2. HOA expansion initiative. Someone wasn't just trespassing. They were planning annexation. I texted Ellie, come to North Ridge, bring the drone. 4 seconds later, on my way. Ellie arrived, surveyed the scene, and said flatly, someone's made a very expensive mistake. The drone rose. As it circled, Ellie's eyes narrowed at the monitor. Terrence, 3 clean-cut stumps, old-growth oaks, timber, trespass. Treble damages. I stepped in front of the house as the drone hovered. My name is Terrence Bishop, sole owner, parcel ID 4492, October 14th, 2025. This structure is unauthorized trespass on land documented by Deed Book 12, page 405. Ellie captured everything. The house, the stumps, the boundaries. Then I called Joe and Tom. Bring the excavator. We're taking it down today. Tom arrived first. Walked straight to a support post. Crouched. Frowned. Shallow pour. No rebar. Sitting on loose fill. He stood. This isn't a house. It's a death trap. 1 snowfall and this deck shears off. Anyone underneath dies. Joe dusted his hands. What's the plan? Immediate abatement, I said. Document everything. Safety first. Start with the deck. No drama, just procedure. The engines rumbled. Joe positioned the excavator boom. Demolition isn't chaos when done right, it's surgery. Joe eased the boom forward. The first beam groaned and surrendered. Then the bucket skimmed a drywall panel. Snap. Dust erupted. Joe froze. Behind the torn panel, a steel utility box built into the frame. Hidden. Tom dropped from his cab, backed out the screws, lifted the lid. Inside, a folder. Too clean. Too deliberate. I opened it. Sketches. Blueprint fragments. Lot outlines. Not just for this house, for the ridge. 3 more structures marked. Paths. Decking. Bottom corner. Confident pen. Phase 2. HOA Expansion Initiative. Tom exhaled. They weren't just building illegally, they were planning to grow illegally. I sealed it in an evidence bag. This isn't trespass, I said quietly. This is premeditated annexation. Joe called from the cab. Clear to keep going? Proceed. The deck folded. Ellie's drone captured everything. Then a rumble from the trail below. A Porsche, crawling across uneven ground like it owned the mountain. She stepped out like the mountain had personally offended her, and for the first time, I saw her in full. She wore a crimson-red blazer, tailored so sharply it could draw blood fitted perfectly to her frame, draped open just enough to reveal a black silk blouse beneath. The neckline plunged in a deep V that drew attention whether you wanted to look or not. Her pencil skirt matched the blazer crimson, sleek, with a subtle slit that suggested power and control with every step. Glossy red heels clicked against the gravel and pine needles with the sharp, deliberate rhythm of someone who believed every surface should accommodate her. Her hair, a rich burgundy that caught the afternoon light like polished mahogany, fell in soft waves to her shoulders, framing her face with calculated elegance. And her lips, painted in the same bold, glossy red as her heels, were pressed into a thin, furious line. She looked stunning, polished, commanding, like a woman who had dressed for battle and fully expected to win. Oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, a thick folder clutched in one manicured hand, expression sharpened to a killing edge. I didn't know her name yet, but every HOA has one. Her gaze swept the scene, the half-collapsed deck, the excavators, the dust still drifting like smoke, the men standing where her fantasy home used to be. Her face tightened disbelief, freezing into fury. She pointed at me like the mountain suddenly had a villain. "What?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. "The hell do you think you're doing?" I lifted my thermos, took a calm sip, and let silence do the work. People like her hate silence. It gives them time to hear themselves. "Good afternoon," I said. "Are you lost?" Her jaw clenched beneath that glossy red lipstick. "Lost? Lost?" She swung her arm dramatically toward the ruined deck, her crimson blazer flaring slightly with the motion. "This is my property." Joe leaned out of the excavator cab, eyebrows raised. Tom crossed his arms, watching her with the patience of a man who had outlived louder storms. I didn't raise my voice. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "this structure is on my land." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "That's impossible," she said. "We had full HOA approval. I'm the president. I authorized this development." Ellie, holding the drone controller, didn't even look up. "Your HOA stops half a mile downhill," she said matter-of-factly. "You're far outside your jurisdiction." The woman ripped off her sunglasses as though that alone might make boundaries move. Her burgundy waves shifted with the sudden motion, catching light. "I have documentation," she insisted, her crimson skirt shifting as she stepped forward aggressively. "This land was approved for expansion. You can't tear down private property." I gestured toward the half-fallen wall. "Private property requires legal ownership," I said. "This isn't." She marched toward me, heels wobbling dangerously on the uneven ground, her glossy red shoes sinking into pine needles. "You stop this right now," she ordered, her voice climbing. "If you don't, I will have you arrested." Tom snorted softly. "Arrested for what? Standing on his own land?" She turned on him like a cat hissing at a bear, her crimson blazer pulling taut across her shoulders. "And who are you?" "Guy who knows a collapse hazard when he sees one," Tom replied calmly. "And your house here was about to kill somebody." She waved him off with a scoff, her red nails flashing. Then she spun back toward me, eyes blazing beneath perfectly applied makeup. "This home cost over $600,000, she hissed. "You're gonna pay for every inch." I didn't blink. "No," I said. "You are." Her breath caught not because she was scared, but because she was unused to losing ground. Ellie spoke up then, steady as a scalpel. "We have GPS overlays. We have drone footage. We have the deed. We have the cut stumps from your illegal tree removal. And we have your hidden Phase 2 expansion plans." The woman in the crimson blazer went still. Her glossy lips parted slightly, just enough to show she recognized the noose tightening. You can't prove anything," she said, but the fire in her voice flickered. Ellie angled the drone toward her. "Everything you say is being recorded." The woman's expression twisted the face of someone who'd built her life on intimidation and suddenly discovered the audience had changed. Then, in a burst of panic, she stormed to her Porsche, yanked open the door, and snatched her phone. Her voice hit the ridge like a cold blade. "You're done. I'm calling the sheriff, and I'm calling my husband." That last word carried weight. Not affection, but power, political connections, money, muscle. She paced in sharp, agitated lines, her crimson heels clicking frantically, spitting half-sentences into the phone. Joe looked at me. Tom looked at me. "Well?" Tom asked. I shrugged. "We keep going," I said. "She's not the last storm coming up this ridge." And as if the mountain wanted to confirm it, a new rumble echoed from the trail below. Heavier, deeper, purposeful. Not the sheriff, not a neighbor, something else entirely. Something coming straight for us. The rumble grew louder. Not the rattle of a local pickup, not the tone of county equipment, but something heavier, smoother, wrapped in money and bad decisions. A black Chevrolet Tahoe burst into view, its grille catching the sunlight like polished teeth. It bounced over the rocks with the confidence of a vehicle that never expected to be told no. The doors didn't open, they exploded outward. First came the man from the back seat, tall, square-jawed, wearing a leather jacket tight enough to prove a point. He had the body of someone who trained for aesthetics, not longevity. Second came the bulkier, one neck thick as a fence post, arms straining against his sleeves, the kind of man you hire when you don't know the difference between strength and intimidation. Then the driver stepped out. Salt and pepper hair, polo shirt tucked into expensive slacks, gold watch, wedding ring. The husband. The woman in the crimson blazer practically sprinted to him, her red heels stumbling slightly on the gravel. "David," she cried. "They're still doing it. They're tearing down our house." He looked at me like a man deciding which wall to punch through first. "You the one?" he said, stepping closer. "Are you the idiot who thinks he can destroy private property and get away with it?" I didn't move. "I'm the owner of this land," I said, "and I'm the one correcting an illegal structure sitting half a mile inside my boundary." The woman jabbed a finger at me, her crimson blazer sleeve riding up slightly. "He assaulted me verbally. He threatened me. He demolished our home like a lunatic," Joe muttered under his breath. "Lady, that deck attacked itself." But the tall security guy didn't wait for explanations. He closed the distance in 4 strides and shoved me hard. I stumbled back a step, boots sliding on gravel. Tom was off his machine before my heels touched the ground. In one fluid motion, he stepped between us, one hand out, palm open. "Not happening," he said, voice level. The bulkier guy stepped up to Tom, chest puffed, fists curled. The woman in crimson screamed, "Don't let them touch me." "This is our property!" David glared at me, face flushing red. "You're done," he growled. "You hear me? Done. You think you can bully my wife?" I straightened, dusted off my shirt, and spoke evenly. "You're trespassing on my land. Your men just initiated physical contact. You're escalating a situation already under legal documentation." He blinked not because he understood, but because he hated how calm I was. Security guy number 1 lunged again. This time, Joe dropped from his excavator like he was stepping out of a bar fight he'd been waiting for. The man charged. Joe didn't punch, didn't kick. He simply absorbed the impact and locked the man's arm in a hold, twisting until the man choked out a surprised grunt. Tom moved on the second guy, intercepting him with a block that looked impossibly efficient military training buried under decades of quiet living. Then, chaos began. Not Hollywood chaos, real chaos. Messy, clumsy, fueled by ego and bad timing. Gravel kicked up, dust swirled. The woman in crimson screamed in 3 different pitches, her burgundy waves whipping around her face. David yelled legal terms he didn't understand. Ellie never stopped recording. "Keep the drone on overhead view," I told her between breaths. "Get angles of initiation. Don't miss anything." She nodded, switching viewpoints with the calm precision of a surgeon. Security guy number 1 landed a wild swing at Joe's shoulder. Joe answered by locking him down again, arms like iron gates. Security guy number 2 tried to push past Tom. Tom, calm as a monk, pinned him against a half-collapsed railing. David took a swing at me. I stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him into a pile of shingles. He hit the ground hard, cursing through teeth full of dust. The woman in crimson shrieked, her glossy red heels clicking frantically as she paced. "Did you see that? He attacked my husband." Ellie zoomed in on David sprawled on the ground. "He tripped," she narrated dryly. "I have it on 3 angles. The situation tipped not toward violence, but toward exhaustion." Everyone realized just how foolish this all looked. Except the woman in crimson. She was desperate now, pacing, screaming fragments of words, fumbling through her purse until she yanked out a folder. The moment she pulled it free, my instincts sharpened. Paper. Contracts. Too clean. "Look," she shouted, thrusting it toward me, toward the drone, toward anyone who would take it. Her crimson blazer shifted with the motion, the black silk blouse beneath catching light. "Here's the agreement! Here's proof! He signed this!" She shoved the papers into my chest. I let them hit me, then held them carefully between 2 fingers. Ellie zoomed in. The drone hovered above with a soft buzz. I didn't even need to open it fully before seeing the problem. The woman in crimson kept screaming, "See? This is legal. This proves everything." I turned the page over. Laser printed signature. My signature pulled from a public document, stretched to fit. Not a single stroke of actual ink. Forgery. David staggered upright behind us, brushing dirt off his shirt. The woman thrust her chin up defiantly, her glossy red lips set in a determined line. "There," she said. "Now what do you have to say for yourself?" I let the camera see the page clearly before I answered. "Just this," I said. "This signature was scanned from Deed Book 12, page 405. It's not original. It's not wet ink. It's a digital cut and paste." I held it toward the drone. "And you just handed it to me voluntarily, on camera." The woman's face drained completely, even beneath her carefully applied makeup. Her burgundy waves seemed to lose their luster. Her crimson blazer, so commanding moments ago, now looked too tight, too bright, like armor that suddenly didn't fit. Even the wind seemed to stop. Tom released his hold. Joe stepped back. The security men froze. David stared at his wife like she'd just set fire to their bank account, and then in the distance, sirens, 3 of them, coming fast, coming hard, coming straight for the ridge. Ellie looked at me. "You ready?" she asked. I exhaled. "I was ready the moment they broke ground," I said. Sirens in the mountains sound different. They echo rolling through the timber and bouncing off the ridge like a warning carried on the wind. By the time the first sheriff cruiser climbed into the clearing, the dust from the scuffle was still hanging in the air, drifting between us like leftover smoke from a brush pile. 3 vehicles parked in a clean stagger, not rushed, not chaotic. This was a department that handled emergencies without losing its pulse. Deputy Miller stepped out first, a tall man in his 50s, shoulders broad, jaw set, eyes steady. He wasn't a hothead. He wasn't a negotiator. He was the kind who showed up, looked, listened, and made a call without theatrics. He scanned the whole scene. The half-collapsed illegal cottage. The excavators idling quietly. The Tahoe with its doors still open. The woman in crimson nearly vibrating with outrage, her blazer slightly disheveled, burgundy waves, wild, glossy lips pressed into a furious line. David brushing dirt from his shirt with wounded pride. The 2 hired muscle guys suddenly less brave. And Ellie's drone hanging in the air like a silent officer. Then he looked at me. "Morning, Terrence," he said. "Morning, deputy," I replied. The woman rushed toward him like salvation had arrived, her red heels clicking frantically on gravel. "Officer, arrest them. All of them," she shrieked, pointing wildly. "They attacked us. They tore down our home. Deputy Miller lifted a single hand, not rude, just enough to reclaim control of the air. "Ma'am, you're going to need to slow down." "Slow down? They ambushed us. They assaulted my husband. They destroyed everything." He didn't answer her. He turned to me instead. "Your side?" I gestured toward Ellie. "We have full documentation, drone footage, ground-level footage, GPS overlays, parcel data, evidence of trespass, evidence of unpermitted construction." I held up a sealed evidence sleeve and a contract. "Mrs." I paused, waiting. "Whitmore," the woman snapped. "Karen Whitmore. That Mrs." Whitmore handed me voluntarily. Deputy Miller took the sleeve. He tilted it slightly toward the light just enough to see what he needed. His expression didn't change, but I saw the moment he understood. "Ma'am," he said calmly and plainly, "it's flat on the paper. No indentation at all. This looks like a high-resolution photocopy, not an original signature." Karen's eyes darted too fast beneath her perfectly styled burgundy waves. David's jaw tightened. Ellie zoomed in with the drone. Deputy Miller slipped the page back into the sleeve and sealed it. His tone stayed even but firmer. "If you're claiming this as a binding contract, we'll need to see the original ink version, not a printed reproduction." Karen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No script left to read. Her crimson blazer seemed to lose its authority, like a uniform that no longer fit. David stepped forward, trying to recover the narrative. "Officer, this man ambushed us. We were defending ourselves." Deputy Miller raised the same calm hand. "We're going to review the footage." He nodded to Ellie. "You said you have timestamps?" "Yes, sir," Ellie said, handing him the controller. "Overhead first, then ground view." The deputy watched. He didn't react quickly or dramatically. He watched like a man who had learned that evidence always speaks louder than people. He saw Security Guy 2 charge Tom, David tripping into shingles, untouched, Karen contradicting herself, and finally Karen forcing the forged contract into my hands. He exhaled slowly. Then he turned to Karen, whose crimson blazer now looked more like a costume than armor. "Ma'am, this footage does not support your version of events." Karen flailed her hands, her red nails catching light. "The drone is fake. They altered it. This is manipulated." "Live feed, Deputy," Ellie said quietly. "Metadata intact." Deputy Miller nodded once. Karen spun toward him again, her burgundy waves whipping, her glossy red lips trembling slightly. "You're letting them frame us!" He straightened. "Ma'am, I'm not letting anyone do anything. I'm reviewing evidence. That's my job." Silence fell heavy like a door shutting. Finally, he spoke. "No arrests on scene. This is now both a civil and potentially criminal matter. I'm forwarding all of this to the district attorney's office." "There will be follow-up," Karen gasped, as though someone had punched the air out of her, her crimson blazer rising and falling with her breath. "What?" "After everything he destroyed." "Ma'am," Miller said steadily, "that's the procedure." He turned to me. "Terrence, I recommend suspending demolition until the DA reviews all this." "I'll comply," I said, "because compliance is a weapon too." Karen snarled, her glossy red lips curling. "You think this is over? I'll have every agency in this state crawling over your property, every one of them." I didn't respond. But Ellie did, her voice soft, precise. "The drone heard that too, Karen." Karen froze. And in her eyes, beneath the fury, beneath the perfect makeup, beneath the commanding crimson blazer that no longer commanded anything, I saw it. That flicker of panic that makes people do stupid, desperate things. 24 hours later, the EPA came knocking. The knock on my workshop door came early. Too early for visitors, too measured for neighbors, and too official to ignore. 3 quick raps, a pause, then 2 more. Government rhythm. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, expecting maybe a delivery driver or a lost hiker. But when I opened the door, 2 men in windbreakers stood on the gravel, dark blue jackets, shoulder patches, badges clipped to their belts, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. The taller one adjusted his glasses, then held up a folder. "Sir," he said, "we received an anonymous complaint regarding potential hazardous waste dumping on this parcel." My stomach didn't drop, it twisted. Anonymous complaint. Right after Karen threatened to unleash every agency she knew. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "What kind of waste?" The man opened the folder. Insulation debris, unsealed solvents, drywall dust, potentially contaminated materials. He glanced up. "We're obligated to investigate." Ellie appeared behind me, still tying her hair back. "What territory?" she asked. The agent pointed to a marked map. The ridge area, where a structure was recently demolished. Of course. She picked the one spot where we'd been hours before, where the ground was still disturbed, where debris from their illegal build could be moved in without us noticing. I exhaled slowly. "All right," I said. "You're free to inspect, but you're going to want your cameras running." The agent blinked. "Sir, we've had activity here recently. I want documentation of your documentation." His partner gave a cautious nod. "Fair enough." We led them up the ridge. The early morning sun cut sharp lines through the trees, illuminating the path like a stage set. And at the clearing, the theater continued. Black bags, broken drywall, a few tipped-over buckets, a barrel tucked behind a pine like someone tried to hide it but gave up halfway. Ellie whispered, "This is staged." I didn't whisper back. I crouched near a pile of drywall. The edges were too clean, too straight, cut by a shop blade, not ripped by a machine. The EPA agent knelt beside me. "Sir, did you or anyone working under you leave this material here?" "No." "Can you prove that?" Ellie lifted the drone controller. "Yes," she said. "We have continuous footage from demolition yesterday. There was no debris of this type on site." I pointed at the ground. "Footprints. These aren't ours. Wrong boot size." The agent looked uneasy. "Still," he said, "we have to collect samples, and we may need to issue a preliminary violation until this is resolved." There it was, the dagger Karen wanted. Not a conviction, not even a fine, but a federal cloud over my name. I didn't argue. Arguing makes you sloppy. Procedure makes you lethal. So I simply said, "Do what you need to do. We'll cooperate." Ellie filmed everything. The agents bagged samples, shot photos, marked coordinates. Then, halfway through the process, a truck engine growled up the ridge. Tom. He stepped out slowly, walking stiff from the scuffle the day before, carrying a metal case under one arm. "You're going to want to see something," he said. The EPA agents turned. "And you are?" one asked. "Retired structural inspector," Tom replied, not bothering with a handshake. "And the guy who knows when he's looking at a setup." He popped open the case. Inside, a small hard drive and a folded map. "This," he said, "came from Phil's trail cam over the East Ridge." He handed the drive to Ellie, who connected it to her tablet. A grainy black and white video appeared. Midnight. A large SUV backing into the woods. Same model as David's Tahoe. Same roof rack. Same dents under the bumper. 2 figures stepping out, carrying bags, hauling construction debris, offloading barrels. The timestamp was unmistakable. The EPA agent leaned closer to the screen. "Why didn't you show us this earlier?" I shrugged lightly. "You hadn't asked." Ellie paused the video at the clearest frame. A man lifting a bag from the trunk. His hoodie read, "Elk Hollow HOA, big enough for anyone to read." The EPA agents exchanged a look, one part frustration, one part dawning realization. Tom crossed his arms. "You were about to issue a violation," he said, "for trash that wasn't here until after dark." The lead agent exhaled heavily. "Sir, we're going to need copies of this footage." "You'll have it by noon," Ellie said. The agent added, "We'll be filing a report, but not against you." I raised an eyebrow. "Against who?" The agent closed his folder. The party responsible for falsifying an environmental complaint and illegal dumping of construction waste. That's a federal offense. Somewhere in my chest, a knot loosened. Not victory, not yet, but momentum. As we walked back down toward the workshop, Tom patted my shoulder. She picked the wrong mountain, Terrence. Ellie smirked. And the wrong lawyer. I nodded. But inside, I felt something else. Not anger, not relief, focus. Because the next step wasn't about debris or drones or forged contracts. It was about intent. And intent in court is what buries people. The morning after the EPA left, the ridge felt different. Not calmer, not lighter, just coiled, like the air itself was waiting for the next move. Ellie was already at the kitchen table when I came down, laptop open, glasses low on her nose, coffee sitting untouched, turning cold while she worked. She was building something more formidable than a case. She was building inevitability. Folders were laid out with military precision, screenshots clipped and labeled, GPS overlays aligned perfectly, drone angles frozen mid-air with timestamp markers. A dozen headings typed in her neat, controlled font. Trespass. Timber damage. Old growth. Unpermitted structure. Assault. Initiation. Forgery. Contract. EPA false report. Illegal dumping. I leaned over her shoulder. You prepping for trial or founding a new religion? She didn't look up. A religion lets you repent, she replied. A courtroom doesn't. Around 9:15, Tom arrived carrying a thick envelope and the same metal case from yesterday. He pushed the door open with his elbow because his hands were full. County office opens at 10, he said. Figured you'd want to see the autopsy report before I file it. He laid the documents out on the table piece by piece. Structural diagrams, soil tests, load calculations. His handwriting was tight and unforgiving, like he was writing on stone tablets. It wasn't just shoddy construction, he said. It was criminal negligence dressed up as a weekend getaway, he pointed. Shallow footings poured on uncompacted soil, no rebar reinforcement whatsoever. Deck ledger bolted wrong, so wrong it was practically a death sentence. Roof load exceeding safety limits by nearly 30%. Entire house sitting on unstable grade. Tom tapped a specific point on the drawing. One good snowfall, and this thing snaps clean off the slope. Anyone standing under the deck wouldn't have a chance. Ellie looked up long enough to say, and they planned to blame us for the collapse. That's the part that sticks. Tom nodded. Which is why I'm filing this with the county engineers and sending a copy to the DA. They don't like it when amateurs build grenades. Around 10:40, a white sedan turned into our driveway. The county courier stepped out carrying a stack of envelopes, banded together like a bundle of bad news. He didn't have to say anything. You can feel a summons through paper. I handed one to Ellie, one to Tom just to hold, and opened mine. Destruction of property, assault, harassment, emotional distress, intentional sabotage. They'd thrown the entire kitchen sink in, hoping at least one accusation would stick. Ellie read hers silently, eyes narrowing just slightly. They're leaning on emotion, she said. Not evidence, Tom snorted. Desperation never looks good in print. The afternoon passed in steady preparation. Ellie cataloged every clip, tagged every file, added officer statements, EPA notes, timestamps from the trail cam footage Tom brought yesterday. The porch table slowly transformed into a war map, not of land, but of law. By sunset, everything was ready. The last folder slid shut. Ellie set her laptop aside and stretched her fingers. Excavators knock down walls, she said. Paperwork knocks down entire careers. Tom laughed, shaking his head. You two are terrifying. I stepped out onto the porch, looking toward the ridge where the illegal cottage once stood, a quiet patch of dirt now. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the prologue to something bigger. Then it happened. A soft chime. Ping. Ellie frowned and pulled her laptop back onto her lap. That's strange, she murmured. I wasn't expecting anything. She clicked her inbox. One new message. No subject line. Sender, board.memberprivatemail.com. My eyebrows lifted. A whistleblower? Ellie opened the message. And the change in her posture was immediate. Her back straightened, her jaw set, her eyes sharpened like a lens snapping into focus. "Terrence," she whispered, "you need to see this." It was an email chain, long, messy, and devastating, between Karen, the contractor, and 2 HOA board members. Just build it. Don't worry about the boundary. Another line. If he complains, the HOA reserve fund will cover legal. He can't fight us, not with our budget. Contractor replied, "We're definitely outside the platted HOA zone, Karen. He doesn't check the ridge often. Get it done fast." Another board member hesitated. "Are you sure? This feels risky." Karen responded, "He lives up there alone. He won't push back, and even if he does, we'll bury him in motions." Ellie scrolled further. Attached was a PDF proposed expansion plan. Phase 2. Multiple cottages. Extended road access. All drawn directly across our land. Tom let out a low whistle. "This isn't negligence," he said. "This is malice." Ellie's voice was almost quiet enough to be a whisper. "This is intent, Terrence. The one thing judges care about more than anything else." Everything in me went still. Not angry, not relieved. Just certain. Karen hadn't made a mistake. She hadn't misread a map. She hadn't been misled. She had planned this, counted on us folding, counted on HOA money to crush whoever stood in her way. And now a member of her own board had stabbed her in the back to save themselves. The wind outside shifted, bending the pines. The ridge seemed to exhale. Ellie closed the laptop slowly. "Well," she said, voice steady as a hammer, "I think we just won the pre-trial. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The evidence would speak for us tomorrow." And Karen would finally hear exactly what it sounded like when the truth landed. The courtroom was colder than it looked. Old wood, old air, old expectations. Ellie and I sat shoulder to shoulder at the defense table, not touching, but aligned the way 2 mountain ridges hold the same horizon. Karen entered behind her lawyer, and despite everything, despite the forged contracts, the midnight dumping, the federal complaints, she still wore that crimson-red blazer, tailored, sharp, commanding. The black silk blouse beneath still plunged in that confident V-neck. The crimson pencil skirt still moved with authority. The glossy red heels still clicked against the courtroom tile. Her burgundy waves were perfectly styled, her glossy red lips set in determination. She looked like a woman who still believed she could win. But something had changed. The blazer fit differently now, not quite as sharp, as if the weight of evidence had settled onto her shoulders. The clicking heels sounded less like authority and more like retreat. The glossy lips pressed together not in confidence, but in barely contained panic. David followed behind her, looking like a man who'd bargained with the wrong devil and was now realizing the bill had come due. When the judge walked in, the room straightened itself. Small woman, sharp eyes, the kind who didn't need to raise her voice to quiet a room. Words obeyed her simply because she spoke them. Karen's attorney rose first. He launched into a long, winding monologue about innocence, community vision, emotional trauma, reckless destruction, cruelty, intimidation, violence. He painted Karen as a martyr and me as a barbarian with a bulldozer. The judge listened, but not deeply. You can tell by a judge's eyes when the words are landing and when they're just passing through the room like steam. He finished. Karen nodded and dabbed her cheek with the corner of a neatly folded tissue, her crimson blazer shifting slightly with the motion. Then the judge turned to our table. "Your response." I didn't look at the attorney we'd hired to sit quietly and keep things procedural. I stood. "Your Honor, I am representing myself. Mrs. Bishop will facilitate the exhibits." A flicker passed through her eyes' recognition, then something firmer. "Proceed, Mr. Bishop." I stepped to the podium with no notes. Not because I memorized anything, because truth doesn't need memorizing. "Exhibit A," I began. "Parcel maps, GIS overlays, and my deed. The plaintiffs built their structure entirely on my land. Ellie clicked the first slide. The boundaries lit up on the monitor like a wound with clean edges. Exhibit B, drone documentation of the structure, including evidence of timber trespass, 3 old-growth oaks cut without permit. Ellie brought up the footage. The room stayed silent, the way a room does when everyone sees the truth at the same time. Exhibit C, initiation of physical contact. The video played, Security Guy 1 shoving me first, Security Guy 2 swinging at Tom, David tripping over shingles without a finger laid on him, Karen stiffened in her crimson blazer, the fabric pulling tight across her shoulders. I didn't stop. Exhibit D, the contract misses. Whitmore presented as evidence I had approved her construction. The clerk handed the judge the sleeve. No ink indentation, I said. No stroke variance. High-resolution reproduction of my deed's signature. Forgery. The judge examined it. Her jaw shifted. Karen's attorney sank lower in his seat. Karen's burgundy waves seemed to lose their luster under the courtroom lights. Exhibit E. EPA's preliminary report stating the debris at the site did not originate from us. Ellie handed the paperwork forward. Exhibit F. Trail cam footage showing the plaintiffs transporting and dumping construction waste on our ridge in the middle of the night. The video froze with the ELK hollow HOA hoodie perfectly visible. Karen's attorney whispered something harsh to her, but she avoided his eyes. Her glossy red lips pressed into a bloodless line. Exhibit G, I said. The room seemed to hold its breath. Internal HOA emails submitted anonymously by a board member. Ellie clicked, open the chain. I read them aloud, one by one. Just build it. Don't worry about the boundary. Karen flinched, her crimson blazer shifting with the involuntary movement. If he complains, HOA reserve fund will cover legal. He can't fight us. David closed his eyes. Get it done fast. He doesn't check the ridge often. Finally, he lives up there alone. Even if he pushes back, we'll bury him in motions. The courtroom was silent in a way that felt physical, like the air grew heavier to trap the moment where everything changed. Karen's crimson blazer, so commanding when she entered, now looked like a costume she couldn't take off. The glossy red heels that had clicked with such confidence now seemed too bright, too loud. The burgundy waves that had framed her face so perfectly now looked stiff, artificial. I closed the binder. No further defense, Your Honor. Then I returned to my seat, not triumphantly, not smugly, just with the certainty of a man who had carried the truth to the finish line. The judge leaned back, removed her glasses, and looked directly at Karen. Mrs. Whitmore, she began. Her voice was not loud. It didn't have to be. In 20 years on this bench, I have seen honest mistakes. I have seen negligence. I have even seen ignorance. Karen shrank into her chair, her crimson blazer bunching awkwardly. But I rarely see such a calculated, malicious attempt to weaponize the legal system against a private citizen. Karen's glossy red lips trembled. Your claims are dismissed with prejudice, the judge continued. That means you may not file them again. Her attorney rubbed his forehead. Furthermore, the judge said, turning another page, given the overwhelming evidence of forgery, perjury, and intentional misuse of HOA funds, I am referring this transcript and all exhibits to the district attorney for criminal review. Karen's face collapsed, all the makeup, all the polish, all the commanding presence of that crimson blazer gone in an instant. She looked small, defeated, stripped of armor. David's face turned gray. The judge picked up her gavel. Judgment for the defendant, she declared. Full legal fees awarded. Then she paused, looked at me, and added, and Mr. Bishop, I met her eyes. Yes, Your Honor? Thank you for removing that structure before it killed someone. The gavel struck like a rifle shot. Court adjourned. Karen sobbed, her crimson blazer shaking with each breath, her burgundy waves falling forward to hide her face. Her attorney gathered papers with trembling hands. David stared at the floor like he hoped it would open and swallow him. Ellie closed her binder. Tom nodded once, and I felt something I hadn't felt since this began. Not victory, just peace. the kind that comes only when the truth wins in daylight. The air outside the courthouse felt different the moment we stepped out. Not lighter, not louder, just honest. For the first time in weeks, Karen didn't rush out behind us. She didn't storm or scream. She shuffled, supported by her husband, looking like a woman who had finally realized the mountain she was climbing wasn't mine. It was justice. Her attorney avoided her eyes. He carried his briefcase loosely, as if it suddenly weighed too much. As we stepped off the courthouse steps, Ellie squeezed my hand once quiet, firm. "That's it," she said. "You did it." "I didn't do it," I replied. "We did it. Tom joined us," tucking the folded structural report back into his case with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had spoken the truth out loud and been heard. But the story didn't end there. Not even close. By evening, word had spread across El Calo like sparks jumping between dry pine needles. The HOA board wasn't just shaken, they were in freefall. An emergency meeting was called before sunset. And according to 3 different neighbors who called Ellie within the hour, it wasn't a meeting at all. It was a revolt. Board members who had followed Karen out of fear for years were suddenly speaking openly, loudly, with an exhaustion that sounded like relief. By 9 p.m., the official notice went out. Effective immediately, Karen Whitmore is removed from the presidency of the El Calo HOA. Nothing about fraud, nothing about forged documents. Nothing about dumping waste in the woods. But the absence of words said plenty. The next morning, the county followed with its own message, far shorter, far sharper. HOA jurisdiction does not extend beyond Ridgeline Road. Bishop property is not under HOA governance. The map online updated instantly. A bold red line clean as a blade cut their world from mine. Ellie printed it, pinned it to the fridge, touched the corner like she might frame it someday. The district attorney moved quickly, too. A formal inquiry was opened into forgery, perjury, illegal dumping, HOA fund misuse, conspiracy to commit property fraud. David voluntarily stepped away from his law firm pending investigation. Everyone knew what that meant. The 2 hired enforcers were picked up quietly. One apparently had a suspended license from a different assault case. This didn't help him now. But the part that surprised me most wasn't the legal fallout. It was the people. Neighbors I barely knew showed up, some with pie, some with beer, some with stories they had been afraid to tell before. An older woman hugged Ellie and whispered, "We were scared of her too." A man from the HOA side said, "I didn't vote for her. Wish I'd spoken up sooner." A younger couple simply left a handwritten note on our porch. "Thank you for standing your ground. You helped all of us." But the moment I knew things had truly changed came at the celebration Ellie insisted on planning. A simple gathering, no speeches, no decorations, just people and food and the quiet satisfaction of surviving a storm. We held it on the very clearing where the illegal cottage had once stood. The ground, flat, open, and honest again. Tom brought ribs. Joe grilled sausages. Someone set up a portable speaker. Kids ran between tree shadows. The fire pit in the center glowed like a heartbeat, returning to normal. And that's when he appeared. Deputy Miller, not in uniform, just jeans, boots, a casual shirt, and a paper plate holding 3 ribs like a peace offering. He stood beside me and Tom near the fire. "Good turnout," he said. "Good people," I replied. He nodded toward the flames, then lowered his voice. "Terrence, the county's reviewing 3 other El Calo projects down south. We're seeing the same pattern, cut corners, bad permits, boundary issues, real messy stuff." Tom let out a soft groan and bit into a rib. "Knew it," he muttered. "Do idiots travel in packs?" Deputy Miller smirked, then continued. "We might need outside help. A legal consultant who knows land law inside and out. And a structural guy who can spot a fraud foundation at 20 feet. Tom elbowed me slightly. "Depends on the pay rate," he said, chewing. I didn't answer immediately. I just stared into the fire, the embers rising, the sparks catching the breeze and drifting toward the tree line like small glowing truths. "Let me think on it," I finally said. Miller nodded. "No rush," he murmured. But this thing with Karen, it wasn't isolated. Some folks got real comfortable bending rules up here. He stepped away to join the food line. Tom watched him go, then shot me a sideways look. "You're not going to stay out of it," he said. "Not your style." I didn't argue. Didn't need to. Sometimes, the next chapter doesn't announce itself. It just pulls up a chair at your fire. The night deepened. The music softened. Stars pushed through the dark one by one. People laughed. Ellie moved from group to group, her smile warm and easy again. Kids toasted marshmallows near the coals. When she finally came to my side, she leaned her head against my shoulder. "Feels like the mountain can breathe again," she whispered. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Feels like it." She lifted her glass. "To standing your ground," she said, "and making damn sure no one builds on it but you." Everyone nearby echoed the toast. The fire cracked. The ridge hummed with night sounds, owls, wind, and something softer beneath it. Peace. And somewhere in the dark woods, past where the illegal cottage once stood, the mountain listened and approved.